Before we begin, I'd like to give a quick shout out to Antonin Razavi for choosing the topic of this video. Suggest the next class for me to cover in the comments below. Do you want to know more about a class? If yes, then you clicked on the right video. This is Class Overviews, a series where I go over one of the 10 Hearthstone classes, their playstyle, hero power, decks, staple legendaries, and if they are an overall good class to craft cards for in the context of the wild meta. I hope you can all get something out of this video, whether you are a new or returning player. Now, let's begin with the face-smacking, card-burning, weapons expert herself, Rogue. Valera's interesting. While she may not always be the best or most relevant class on wild tier lists, she's always an extremely unique case, and this can be even seen in her hero power itself, Dagger Mastery. It's 2 mana, and you equip a 1/2 weapon. While not seeming too powerful at first, this hero power is really strong under close inspection. Being the only power that equips something, you can essentially save mana by using your hero power on turn 1, attacking, and then attacking again the next turn. You essentially get twice the value compared to other hero powers like Mage, being able to deal 2 damage over 2 turns compared to only 1 damage a turn for the same mana cost. This is a double-edged dagger, however, since you have to face tank all damage you deal. This is the main reason Rogue is balanced as a class. Sadly though, this strong hero power does not get used much at all because the main Rogue decks you'd play either have an infinite weapon equipped or a different hero power. But we will get to that in a bit. Now, what is Rogue's playstyle exactly? Well, she's pretty much all or nothing. You can either play extremely aggressive and hit the opponent's face with weapons or ridiculously overstated minions. Alternatively, you can play a deck that involves you slowly milling your opponent down, going into fatigue, and then winning because you can essentially just go infinite thanks to all the shuffle cards you have access to. Let's just look at the current selection of popular Rogue decks, in no particular order. Firstly, we have Pirate Kingsbane Rogue. You use your many tutor options to draw your infinite weapon, buff it up, hit their face for loads of damage, and you can just play a few other pirate support cards along the way. Next, we have Odd Rogue. Use your upgraded hero power that now gives you a 2/2 weapon to push lots of damage face, and then just run odd support cards as well. Caverns Below Rogue. This is a deck that has finally been brought back into the spotlight thanks to the wild unnerfs. You can complete the quest as early as possible by drawing your Bloodsail Flybooter with Captain Sparrett, then bouncing it with Shadow Step, completing the quest, and then absolutely stomping your poor enemy with 1 mana 5/5 charges and other cheap cards with degenerate effects. Lastly, Mill Rogue, the slow deck I talked about earlier. You can be the scum of the earth in wild, stalling turns and slowly burning all the cards in your opponent's deck, making them fatigue for lots of damage while you yourself stay alive thanks to Rogue's abundance of cards that shuffle minions back into your deck. You do lose to anything remotely aggressive though, so don't expect the legend grind to be as easy as it would be if you played the decks above. While the variety of meta decks is obviously very aggro focused, there is still enough variety to get someone interested in playing Rogue. I didn't even mention many Rogue decks that are very unique but don't perform well on ladder. I'm talking about Burgle Rogue, Mechathune Rogue, Big Dragon Rogue. I would recommend doing research on those 4 specifically if they sound interesting to you. They're quite fun, but for the purpose of this video, I can't recommend them to the general player just due to how badly they perform at the moment. Though, if you want to play casually, Burgle Rogue is an incredible deck to play and you'll have loads of fun with it. Now, let's get into some cards. Specifically, staple class legendaries. Now, Rogue is a really weird case in that it has pretty much no legendaries that's a universal play, so I will specify if a legendary I mention is only used in one deck. Kingsbane, an insane infinite weapon. You can buff it up a lot and is the only reason Pirate Kingsbane Rogue exists, and obviously only sees play in that one deck. Flick Skyshift. Just awesome removal. She's perfect in any slow deck, and if you really want to, she can be played in an aggro deck. Tess Greymane. She has a game-winning effect. Unfortunately, she only sees play in Burgle Rogue, but she carries the deck, especially when you can shuffle 15 copies of her back into your deck. Valera the Hollow. You just get a free turn, and the new hero power can be a second Cold Light Oracle in Mill Rogue. Just don't play her in anything aggressive, though. Caverns Below. This card has really become good after the unnerfs. Obviously sees play in Caverns Below Rogue, but we will truly have to see how well the deck holds up in the future, so be wary if you want to craft this quest. Lastly, Myra's Unstable Element. Just a great finisher in any aggressive deck. When you run out of steam, on turns 6 and 7, play this, fully refill your hand, and just go all out the next turn. So, to wrap things up, Rogue was a really interesting class to cover. She really is all over the place, from her hyper aggro weapon decks to the ones that play the long fatigue game. Rogue is just a class that can satisfy many different playstyles, but not all of her decks are going to win you ranked games. I can only really recommend Odd and Kingsbane Rogue to players at the moment, as they aren't very expensive investments and are the strongest decks the class has access to. I will say this much though, Rogue has a lot of decks that have tons of potential. Many might be weak at the moment, but have the ability to completely break out in the future thanks to new expansions and the incredible card support she always seems to get. Overall, if Rogue interests you, I would definitely recommend crafting cards for her. Her two aggressive decks perform incredibly, but outside of that, there are still loads of other decks you can play, just to have a good time, and in the end, that's why we all play Hearthstone, right? But for now, Zedude out.